what is happening right now in Gaza. And we know that Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has instructed the IDF to carry out massive bombardments in the Gaza Strip after falsely, and they're claiming that Hamas has violated the ceasefire. What's your understanding of what's going on in Gaza? And here is the reaction before going to your comment. Here's the reaction coming from the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in response to that.
Over the weekend, Israel assassinated a military official of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad movement. Does that violate the ceasefire law between Israel and Hamas, or are they treated as a separate group?
You're talking about the strike against the Palestinian Jihad individual?
Yes.
Yeah, look, Israel didn't surrender its right to self-defense. Obviously, the ceasefire is based on obligations on both sides. By the way, we'd also like to see Hamas speed up the return of hostage bodies. We still have 13 hostages, 2 Americans included. But we don't view that as a violation of the ceasefire. They have a right. There's an imminent threat to Israel, and all the mediators agree with that.
Yeah. What he literally said, it was the subtitle was in German.
I got it. I know enough German to get that.
Yeah.
This is standard. I think they coordinated. I know they coordinated ahead of time on how they were going to do this. And when I say they, I mean Kushner, Witkoff, Trump, Netanyahu, and maybe 1 or 2 others in the Netanyahu circle. They coordinated on how they were going to let Bibi Netanyahu continue at a somewhat slower pace, starvation, tanks, aircraft, whatever is necessary to kill Hamas. There was no intent on a ceasefire, none whatsoever. Trump just wanted credit for it. It's like so many things. Look at Ukraine. All the pronouncements he made and never fulfilled a single one of them. Look at the other things that he talks about all the time, domestic and international, that he says this or that about and never follows up, and certainly never achieves his purpose in any significant way. Strategic or just offhand, he doesn't achieve his purpose. In this case, though, I think it's very different. I think, like the previous period, the penultimate period of the diplomacy with Iran, when they violated every rule in the game book and attacked, that's what they planned here. They just planned it on a slower burner and with maximum effect with the Israelis. Notice how the Israelis revered Trump. I mean, they were putting pictures of him up over Bibi. All of this was to gain footing for Kushner and the money-making enterprise that he represents, and that's all he is, pure money, and for Trump, especially in the pursuit of the Nobel Peace Prize, So here he's got another, what is this, the 8th, the 9th war or something that he stopped? He doesn't stop any of them. They keep on going if they were significant conflicts when he went in. Now, some of them he just makes up. So this was a plan. It was a very carefully thought out plan. I'm sure Marco Rubio was a part of it. I'm sure Witkoff and Kushner, to a degree, were a part of it. But the biggest part was Trump and Netanyahu agreeing that they would have a peace deal, or it looked like a peace deal, a warning. They'd certainly have a ceasefire, and then Bibi would just violate it as he normally does and go on doing what he was doing. He's starving again, too. He's closed the entryway for the trucks. So there are no trucks getting in, and the trucks that are there, I'm told, are having extraordinary difficulty doing anything because he's prohibited anybody who knows what they're doing, like UNRWA, from practicing what they're doing. So it's nothing new, is what I'm saying. Nothing new at all, except Bibi's killing. And look at what he's doing in the West Bank. The pace of killing and murder and dispossession in the West Bank has picked up 3 times.
Do you think that there is some sort of communication between the Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, and the United States, or they don't care about it? Because I see no love, no communication between the two.
I don't think there's communication of significance. I think maybe Mahmoud Abbas his telephone call may be answered, but that's about it. And it's not answered by anybody at the top. He's an insignificant person here, really. And one of the best things he could possibly do is to get himself gone and let somebody take over the authority and all of its ramifications, who's young, dynamic, and wants to do something decent. He's not going to do that. The sinecure is too great. At least Arafat. I remember the last time Powell met with Arafat. I think it was in Ramallah. It was right before Arafat passed away. Arafat always had that Mahmoud Abbas ability to keep everything close to his chest and to make sure he prospered while possibly other people of his entourage weren't prospering. And to always keep people at an arm's length who were really solid citizens and trying to do for the Palestinians what should be done for them and not let them get too far ahead. The guy who was in head of security was a person like that. Powell and I used to talk about it. Dallon, I believe, Dallon, whatever his name was. But he was a significant thorn in Arafat's and then Abbas's side because he was really interested in the plight of the Palestinians, not in lining his own pocket, which is what the authority is all about, really, lining the pockets of the people who are in it. So who cares what Mahmoud Abbas is doing? Because he's insignificant. The real power here opposing Israel is Hamas and its allies.
We've learned that Hamas has canceled the handover of the body of dead Israeli prisoners, which was scheduled for today, Larry. But they have decided to cancel that. Is that going to change the policy? Is that going to put pressure on Trump and Netanyahu, Witkoff? Because these people were somehow, look at the peace plan, look at the ceasefire. It's all about getting the prisoners.
Well, I find it unconscionable that Trump, Witkoff, Rubio, all of us, the newspapers in the United States, radio and TV, not all of it, but most of it, don't see the imbalance between Palestinians who are taken prisoner and Jews and Israelis in general who are taken prisoner. They're both prisoners. And once you accept that, and you accept that there are certain rules and certain decorum you're supposed to employ when dealing with prisoners, the Israelis are so guilty, so horribly guilty, so unspeakably guilty, so atrociously guilty in the way they treat those whom they call prisoners, whatever the term is now. We invented one, unlawful combatant, for the war on terror, and started a trend in that regard. That's not even mentioned in Geneva. There is nowhere you will find in Geneva unlawful combatant. We invented that. Well, that's kind of what the Israelis have done, except they've lowered the Palestinians to subhuman. And the way they treat them in their prisons, the way they treat them in interrogations, the way they treat them in general is just horrible. And so we get all this conversation about Hamas treats people, whether they're dead people who died normally because of Israeli bombing or some other reason, and they can or can't find their carcass in this rubble Israel has created. We use that as a pretext to blame Hamas and Netanyahu, of course, to resume the fighting, when in fact, the real burden of blame and censure is on the Israelis. So until we talk about prisoners, quote unquote, detainees, quote unquote, with viciousness in our voice or alarm and anger in our voice with regard to Hamas and their treatment, we need to take a hard look at Israel, because it is one of the worst states, if not the worst, on the face of this earth in the way it runs its prisons and treats its prisoners.
Larry, here is what Donald Trump said about Israel and the way he sees the position of Israel in the United States.
States backs Israel, but they back it less than they used to. I was having a lot of problems getting support for Israel. And I can't really understand it because I grew up in a world where everything evolved around politically. Everything evolved around Israel, and the power was amazing. One bad word about Israel, and you were virtually out of politics. Today, one good word about Israel, you're out of politics. But I'm still here, and we're leading in the polls by about 50 points.
I wish that were true. I wish it were true what he just said. One bad word about Israel and you're out of politics. One good word about Israel and you're out of politics. I wish it would shift dramatically. It is shifting. There's no question about it shifting. And that was so much obfuscation, which Trump is absolutely gorgeously beautiful at. I don't know if it's intentional, but he's probably one of the best obfuscators I've ever run into in my life. He can have the truth on this ear, a lie on this ear, and out of his mouth comes a combination of the two. It's incredible. He has a birthright ability to do that.
He tries to exaggerate the situation to show the importance of his position, because
Yeah.
he says whatever is happening because of me, and nobody wants.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
wait until it really does, all this turmoil out there amongst MAGA, that largely the assassination of Charlie Kirk has begun with a vengeance. Wait until that really rolls into the midterms and we see something dramatic happening in the midterms, something all their redistricting and all their criminality and the state politics in which they're involved won't solve. Then comes the crunch point. What do they do then? Do they unleash even more forces into the cities, cause the cities to rebel in a sense, and then declare the Insurrection Act in force and take over? We've got a while left before we get to that point, and I'm hearing some things from people like the Election Task Force and others that say it could be a close run thing. And I don't think the GOP, Johnson and Thune in particular, and others in that category, ever dreamt that there was a possibility they would lose their majority, not just in one house, but in both houses. So wait until you see what that effect, what that situation affects out of Trump.
yeah, it's so.
And by the
amazing.
way, do you know that Johnson still hadn't seated that newly elected Congresswoman? He still has not seated her. He's not sworn her in. This is unconscionable. I mean,
Yeah.
they were doing this. And also, nobody on the SASC has bothered to ask the Southern Command commander to come up and give testimony, because the committees are run by the Republicans and they don't dare do that. What would he say under questioning? What would that admiral say under questioning? He's obligated by the Constitution to tell the truth to the Congress, as he is obligated to tell the truth to his commander-in-chief. What would he tell the Congress about these? What are we up to now? Almost 50 people we've killed on the high seas with no due process whatsoever. We are a categorically outlaw state. We are operating completely outside the law, our own domestic law and international law. We are a outlaw state. Smedley Butler said he was a criminal for capitalism on 2 continents. Smedley Butler wouldn't even recognize what we're doing today.